This stream is powered by Melita, using Melita Gigapower Internet. World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
For only €5 a month, experience every high-definition moment on your TV, tablet, phone or PC. Great teams, great moments, and so much more. TSN from Melita is your ticket to stay in the game. Visit melita.com/sports.
Senna was a god. No one could even dream to follow him.
I'm from a very humble background.
The role of women at that time were really difficult.
It's just so dangerous. You're risking not only your life, but also my life.
Wish your Wi-Fi network would just work in any room? Our new Stellar Wi-Fi is AI assisted to give you the smoothest, fastest possible Wi-Fi throughout your home. Stellar Wi-Fi, assisted by AI, exclusive to Melita. Find out more in-store or online.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
Today is a little bit different from what we traditionally get to see when it comes to racing action with the crew on Gran Turismo Sports. Normally when we talk about racing like this, it's all about the solo effort. It's all about the push to get your vehicle to the very end at the very top. Today is a little bit different. Randomized teams have been put into the mix, and when you have a car which is maybe a little bit tougher to get off the line, like a Toyota Yaris, this is going to be two races you do not want to miss here with World Pro Racing live on YouTube, Facebook Live, and on Twitch, as well as the platforms that you see right now, like some motorsport.tv, like some TVM Sport, and ESTV, the Esports Television Network. My name's Jake Sperry, joined alongside by Kieran McGinley for both races worth of action. And this has been a very interesting scenario that brings us to the point where we are on Thursday here, Kieran. We have ourselves 7 teams of 2 looking to work up to get the best point score possible. It's 15 laps around this place, twice over. But what's crucial is it's all about qualifying to work out who starts out where.
Yeah, and a very good evening to everybody. Welcome along to the stream tonight. Glad you could join us here for what promises to be a short track full of action. It's only 1.2 miles around about that for Tsukuba, where we're racing tonight. And it's a very narrow track as well. So as you said, Jake, qualifying is going to be critical when it comes to that first race. When it comes to the second race, however, it's almost like the race is turned exactly on its head. And it gives the teams that maybe didn't get a chance to put a qualifying lap in that they're proud of, they can have a chance at scoring some maximum points in race number 2. It is all to play for here. And of course, we go into cars that the drivers only have had a very limited amount of time to get used to.
Absolutely, we do. We are heading over to practice in the next couple of minutes. So if you haven't had the opportunity to, now is your time. You can see we've got Twitter bios right down here. You can always give us a nice follow so we can keep down in on some more of the amazing action. But more importantly than that, you can go and like, share, and subscribe to World Pro Racing for more amazing racing content, which comes to you every single week with action, which is packed up and down the order, which includes what's happening tomorrow as we go to round 2 of the action for the World Pro Racing Sprint Series on Assetto Corsa Competizione. On top of that, though, Kieran, you have to talk, though, about some of these team pairings, which, for those who have been following World Pro Racing for a very long time, there are quite a few teams who are out there, but there isn't necessarily a couple of teams who stand out to be at the very top. The teams all look pretty similar in terms of what they have. Teams you need to look out for, Team F, which is Ivano 3074 and Kyokudo Sentai. They are definitely going to be the team to beat because Kyokudo is the driver to beat. But keep an eye out on that Team B. Chris Pateri and Ivan Birmingham are going to be that sort of sleeper team that maybe you'd look at and go, well, this is the team that's just going to pick up those consistent points in the middle and put themselves in the mix.
And that's the great thing about random teams, isn't it? Is that you really got one driver who maybe can dominate the world like Kyokudo can. And then maybe there's a driver next to him that might not be as quick. But ever the point of random teams is that it's supposed to give us this, sort of idea and a race where we can watch on and just have no idea what's about to happen. It's going to be amazing fun, and especially in these Toyotas that we're racing tonight, Jake. As I've said before, limited amount of practice at a track that I can't find many people not liking. Tsukuba is one of those circuits that just pulls the heartstrings of every racing fan out there.
Absolutely. Let's head ourselves over then towards the track and the action that we've got going on right now. And you can see here, this is the challenge that they have. Tsukuba, for those who understand Gran Turismo sport, is one of those tracks, Kieran, which has effectively been in the heritage and the lineage of this place for a very long time. I certainly remember my memories of Gran Turismo 4 and driving around this place for the very first time. And it's a small track which really does give you an understanding of what are the composite materials needed to become a racer. It has pretty much every type of corner there and is pretty much indicative of close quarters combat.
Oh, absolutely. And it's one of those tracks you love to start off at and you always keep coming back to. No matter what car you're driving here, this track just has such a lot of character. Only 1.2 miles long, but in these Toyotas, they'll be having a lot of fun out there tonight. Lots of hairpins, as well as that long right-hander that is turn 9, which starts off as a 100-degree radius corner, then tightens almost to a 90-degree corner as you make your way towards the exit. It's almost like a double treble apex, if you really want to call it that. It's such an easy track to learn, but it is such a hugely difficult track to fully master in order to get those lines perfectly right all the way through. This hairpin here we're seeing, turn 8, that's going to be a huge overtaking point. It comes after that long banked corners of turn 6 and then just in towards that slight kink of turn 7 before you really have to start braking hard towards turn 8. Watch some drivers there because the exit of that corner is going to be crucial because you've got one of the longest straights on the circuit as you head towards the final corner at turn 9. And of course, that turn 1 on lap 1 coming up here now is going to be a hugely challenging corner. It's uphill as you brake, so you can brake slightly later than usual, but it's a very tight corner.
Absolutely it is. As we take a look at Ivan here right now, he's got a little bit of damage to the front, which is not quite ideal for him at this stage, so he tries to pilot on around. Now, this has been a sort of race which I think a lot of people are thinking about. We are in practice at the moment. We'll be going to qualifying in about 13 minutes time here at this stage, and there's a lot that you can dissect and work out around this track about trying to be aggressive. But when you've got someone like Rike, who we just saw there for a little moment, pick up a little bit of those off-track incident time limit penalties, which can crop up around this place, you have to be pinpoint accurate here as well. This is tough, and of course, you've got the automatic pit entries as well, which come in. I doubt we'll see much of that going around here today. Soft compound's definitely going to be the port of call for racing, but the point that we're trying to make here is if you do not run a very, very astute and controlled race around this place, you're picking up penalties left, right, and centre. It's so easy to run off wide.
It's very easy to run off wide. It's such a narrow circuit as well that it really does punish any mistake you might make. So it's all about making sure you iron out and make the fewest mistakes possible. And in that way, you can get the best order and the best finish possible. No surprise at all to see Kyokudo timing the practice timing sheet anyway, a 59.4, just under that 60-second limit here. And obviously it's a short circuit, but these cars make it seem like it's one of the best tracks in the world. And I have to agree that it is one of the best tracks. To come here to race hard and fast, it's just fantastic. I love this track.
I also love the track that they have just next door to this, and this is the 2000 layout because at its longest it is a 2-kilometer track that they have around this place, and then they've got the 1000 layout just over the road, and that's part of a trend that you do tend to see with some of these more regional tracks that you find in Japan here, Kieran. The fact that you have a track here and then next door you've got another track next to it as a place to really test your ground really does remind me of the Abisu drift circuits where you've got 5 tracks all sort of bound up and above each other all throughout a hill section.
Yeah, and it's one of those circuits in Japan that's just sort of in the middle of, well, not necessarily nowhere, but the problem with it is there's no public transport that gets to this circuit. You really have to drive out here in order to find yourself at this track. And if you have the right license, you can actually take your own car out onto the track, such is the beauty of this circuit. But yeah, originally broke ground in 1966, wasn't completed the circuit until 1970 with the idea of bringing more youth drivers through in Japan and get that fuel of racing really into the Japanese youth. And I think it's worked, because this track is phenomenal as we're coming too wide in practice. Meanwhile, Lango and Kyokudo trying to go side by side through turn 9. That's not normally something you see.
It certainly isn't, but the door opened then into turn number 1, and Lango's got not much that he can do about that. Duca just trying to get out of the way of everyone through turn 1. It's so easy to lose time at turn 1, just overshoot it a little bit, and then you're finding yourself fighting against gravity to try and get yourself back. There is even though 3074 going through in 12th position as of current here. All of the 14 vehicles here today looking to get things worked out. But I do want to talk about that legacy of Japanese drivers, actually, because it's something that we haven't really talked about. And sometimes you can not necessarily be a little bit known towards the Japanese racing scene. It's not really promoted here for, say, people like me and you here in the United Kingdom, but they have a fantastic Super Formula category, which goes down as probably one of the most competitive racing series out there in the world. And you talk about drivers who are starting to make that push up. Got to talk about, of course, Yuji Tsunoda, who's got himself a Formula One drive for next year.
Yeah, and that's a pretty big step in the world of the Asian motorsport. They love their motorsport here in Asia, and they've had some quality drivers come through the ranks, the likes of Tsukuba Sato being one of the most prolific coming through the ranks as well. And it really does stem from that pure Japanese love of racing. They do love their racing out there, and it's clear to see whenever you go to any Japanese track, be it Fuji, be it Suzuka, or be it here at Tsukuba, there's plenty of action to be had. The tracks are so well designed as well, and it really gives it that really old school feel without feeling dated. It's a fantastic circuit. It's a fantastic scene to go racing as well. I'm just very, very happy we're here to get some racing action here at Tsukuba.
Well, it's not just cars as well that Japanese drivers dash riders are quick at. Of course, there's Taka Nakagami. He's had an absolutely fantastic breakout season in the MotoGP as well. But let's just talk through a couple of teams here whilst we have a moment here, Kieran. The team lineups here, you've got Whistlepig and Duca, who are going to be together in Team A. You've got then Chris Spiteri and Ivan Birmingham in Team B. Team C, you'll have Shalinu and Ilwindi alongside for that, with Team D, Mikael Mershieka and John Varro there. Then you've got Dowlers and Rike in Team E, Ivano and Kyokudo in Team F, and then it's Lango and Muvluen there in Team Team G, which I probably butchered because my Dutch isn't the best. But at this stage, I would actually have a little look at that Team E. It doesn't stand out on paper, but again, like that team with Chris Spiteri and Ivan Birmingham, it looks like Dowlers is someone who can knock on the door and find a pretty decent result. We saw how Rike last week actually managed to pick up 3rd position in the racing that he was able to do. So ultimately, is that maybe the team that just gets there through plain consistency?
Yeah, it's certainly likely, isn't it? It always prides yourself on being consistent, and it always prides yourself on being quick as well. This is a circuit that rewards both of those. So both those drivers will be feeling pretty confident heading into this one, that they've got a good chance of winning it as a team. That's the important thing. None of the drivers here are out for themselves. This is a purely team event. There is no drivers' honours here. So you've got to work together. And if that means team orders have to take place, well, team orders have to take place, surely, to try and get yourself and maximize the amount of points you both can score. But it's very difficult not to draw your eyes to the attention of Team F. And one driver in particular who's timing the timing sheets right now, who's topping the timing sheets, I should say, is, of course, Kyokudo Sentai. He is obviously a man on a mission here tonight. He's going to be the one to watch. It's whether his teammate Ivano can hold a torch to his teammate. That's always a problem. If you're teamed up with someone who is proven to be a quick racer and a clean racer at that too, if he's given any chance to break away from the pack, he will take it. That's going to be a lot of pressure there on Ivano to see what he can do tonight.
And of course, this all goes down to the 2021 road that these drivers are all going through. Of course, these races here with World Pro Racing have opened up from the Maltese community all the way up now to international drivers being allowed to jump in. But for the Maltese drivers, this is about building up a, I would say, legacy of results to say, this is the form that I can bring into 2021 to the FIA Nations Cup and to qualification, which leads to the Nation Games that'll be coming up, the Motorsport Games. And that's where I think a lot of focus is going to be as Windy finds out that that pit sign there is made of concrete, it seems, because he couldn't quite find a way through in on that. But to think about representing your nation in 2021, putting in good results is the key to that. Kyokudo, hands down over 2020. He's been the best driver in this series, hands down, or in these sorts of races that we've seen in World Pro Racing, Kieran. So to have that as well in the back pocket, in a whole range of vehicles to be up there at the front, is this maybe where we see Kyokudo go, well, now I've got to try and carry the entire team forward?
That's going to be an issue, isn't it? That he'll be thinking. I don't think he feels pressure, Kyokudo. I absolutely don't feel he gets the pressure at all. So I think he'll just be hoping that his teammate can follow him through and try and get the best possible results as it stands. But at this moment in time, it's all looking good for Kyokudo. He's, again, the pressure's on his teammate, Ivano, to make sure he performs in this race and in this qualifying session that's coming up very, very shortly, coming towards the end of practice. And it is Kyokudo at the top of the table. That 59.4 has, well, it's come down. It was a 59.6, so Kyokudo is just getting quicker and quicker out there. And if that's a sign of things to come, I don't know what is, as Ivan Birmingham there wants to try and move down in towards turn 9, but I think he's coming into the pits as well. As, yeah, he finds out that that sign is also made out. That is more solid than concrete, surely. That's not made of concrete. It's something stronger than that.
It certainly is. I think it's got itself a bit of titanium plating and a whole lot more to deal with, I think. Let's talk point structure, though, Kieran, for a little bit, because it's a very, very narrow point structure that everyone's going to have to be dealing with today. It's all about points. It's 14 points for a race win, but every point down to position 14 is 1 point less, which means that we're going to be seeing quite a few teams then who will be relying on trying to get as close as they possibly can here with points. And with such a narrow and tight point system as we have here today, surely this is going to be one of those races as Mikael Merciaca goes for a huge off there at turn 7, trying to avoid Chris Pateri, who went for a little bit of a moment out there on circuit. Surely this is going to be a point system that favours the consistent more rather than the quick.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? If you make a mistake, just get back going, because you've only lost a few points at best in that one. And when it comes down to it, you've got obviously the results of qualifying coming into it will decide the order of the first race. It's going to be the second race where the points will really, change up the championship order and change up how these teams are going to be scoring those points towards the end of tonight. What's safe to say is we won't really know what the championship leadings will be like until we're probably on the final lap of the second race.
That definitely seems to be the case here in terms of how each team wants to go out and score. As we take a little look at Duca going around turn number 1 through this small S's section 2 and 3 into 4, and all about breaking into entry. It's such a difficult section there, and so underratedly difficult, that turn 4 hairpin, because you definitely have to turn and brake ever so slightly, or you're just hoping that you have to brake late enough so that you don't have to turn going into the braking markers. It's very car dependent how tough that turn 4 can be.
Yeah, and it's also, it cambers towards the apex as well, very, very slightly as you get in towards turn 4 there, just into the apex of the corner. So in that effect, you want to try and take as much speed as you can through, or as much speed as you dare, because the camber of the corner will help you turn in. The only problem with that is there's very little room for error. If you take too much speed in, that turn 4 hairpin is spitting you out into the wall on the outside, and it's not more than a couple of meters away.
Absolutely not. We are going to be heading to qualifying in about 2 minutes' time, Kieran. But let's talk about why qualifying is going to be so important to this event. Not only do these drivers have to try and set the best times possible, which sets the grid for race 1, but their qualifying times effectively reverse the grid for race number 2, which makes things very difficult. And it also gives a mentality for those drivers who are at the back in race 1 that they've got absolutely nothing to lose by going out there and being aggressive.
especially in race one. As you said, there's absolutely nothing to lose for the people who find themselves qualifying at the back of the field, because any points they lose out on, they have a chance to get back in race two. So why not go for it? Why not go for it in towards turn one? That's going to be a little bit of a crescendo, if you like, towards the mid-pack, where you'll get drivers who think, right, I have a position here where I can score consistent points. Do I be aggressive? Then you've got the front runners as well, who will try and make sure to maximize as many points as possible into the first race, so that when they come towards the second race, they have to be aggressive as well. So there's a real mixture of strategies here, but from the whole field, I think it's going to be push like hell, score as many points as possible. It wasn't quite as catchy as I managed it in my head, but there you go.
Oh, well. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be in the next couple of moments heading over towards that qualifying effort, which is so important for all of these drivers. And we've seen it time and time again, how qualifying is going to be important. It's only 10 minutes, though, this qualifying, so you don't have long to get the best lap time possible in on the book. So, Kieran, the question then becomes, is this going to be a qualifying where we say that the first time is maybe a banker and those second laps are going to be key? And how important is it going to be to get a good lap in on the books early, knowing that you maybe only have one opportunity to pit for fresh tyres and go out and get a perfect lap in?
Obviously, the emphasis is going to be towards the end of the session, because you'll be on a lower fuel load and hopefully on fresher tyres. It's when the drivers decide to do that. 14 drivers trying to fit around a track that's only just over 2 kilometers in length is going to be tricky. Finding the space out there is going to be tricky, as we've already seen in practice. We've seen some cars go side by side. Some of them have worked, some of them haven't. It'll be interesting to see how the drivers approach this qualifying session in terms of finding that space. Can they find the clean air, or will they get lulled into that false sense of security of racing? We're about to find out.
Well, we can see here the drivers getting themselves out of the pits and getting themselves now geared up for their first flying lap. 9 minutes remaining on the clock. We focus on Mikael here in what is classified as 9th place at this moment, but that's just how they've come out of the pits and gear up for a flying lap. Then he does push a little bit too wide, though, and that's going to be the first lap absolutely nowhere, and he immediately resets that one back into pits. Ivan's having a bit of a moment here. He's backwards in the pits at this stage, so that's not quite ideal, I wouldn't have thought. But at this stage at the moment here, we'll look at Whistlepig going through turn 2, turn 3, and now turn number 4 out on track here. A very tough left-hander, which really does have to rely on power on the exit. Does lose the back end slightly, so this will compromise the lap. Through turn 5, under the Dunlop Bridge, and in through 6. And then you got that small kink of 7, which follows up. And it's all about smoothness through that middle sector, Kieran, which really gives you that opportunity to go full bore coming out of 8.
Yeah, you need that consistency all the way through the middle of the track, where it's demanded so much from the suspension, from the camber, from the tyres as well, to get that mechanical grip, and then followed by that long straight up towards turn 9, where you can try and take as much speed as possible through there. But with these cars, it is very easy to understeer them if you just carry just that little bit of a too much speed into the corner. I know, I found that grass and that wall very, very easily in any car I've driven, let alone one of these Toyotas out here. As we see here, that is a Whistlepig getting a bit of fuel on board.
Yeah, we do have a couple of slight technical issues here, ladies and gentlemen. We will try and sort them out as quickly as we possibly can. We did note and see, though, Kieran, that Rico was top of the timing stand there with that opening qualifying time. So that one certainly did work out quite nicely. It's a case to be made that we got one competitor who is effectively stuck in pits at the moment. Server issues and technical issues like that do happen from time to time, but ultimately it's a case of, well, you try and fix it as quick as possible. We get up a new session, effectively A, S, A, and P, and then we'll be back out there and getting qualifying done. But that will be a little bit of a concern to those drivers who did put in their first time on the board, because now they've got to go through the process again of recycling themselves up and getting themselves back into the position, which gives them an opportunity to go out there and race and set the best qualifying time available.
And what they've done is try and reveal their true pace, where you go flat out in qualifying and put everything behind that lap. They might have just revealed to those 6 or 7 drivers who didn't set a lap of what sort of lap times to be expecting in this qualifying session. So swings and roundabouts there, but that's the nature sometimes. Sometimes these things happen. Sometimes we need to go for that technical fixing, but hopefully we'll get you some qualifying action back on screen very shortly. In the meantime, obviously taking a look at those teams, it looks obviously quite nicely balanced. I see Jelenu there, in Team C alongside Windy. That's a pretty strong pairing. We haven't talked much about Team C there, Jake.
We certainly haven't, and Windy has been someone who has been second fiddle in terms of the Windy battles. Normally we see a driver known as Windy Boy 97 do very well, and in fact last week Windy Boy 97 did so well that he picked up the win against Kyokudo at Dragon Trail Raceway. So that was something very interesting just to keep in mind. But Shalinu is one of those drivers that you'd certainly talk about and go, okay, he's not necessarily as quick as Kyoto, as quick as Mikal, who will be the top two on form coming into this one, but someone who definitely knows how to fight for podiums and how to fight for good points. There are drivers up and down the order who will be hoping that they have the pace, and with a field like this, there is a diverse range of pace. But Kieran, the question then becomes, if it's all about consistency and picking up those big points, if you're consistent and you can be consistently quick, the question becomes, how good are you going to be at making those overtakes and getting past drivers when it comes to that second qualifying session?
It's going to be pretty demanding, isn't it? When you've got a narrow track like this one and overtaking opportunities are at a premium. Yes, there are 3 hairpins, but really when you're looking at it, those are your real overtaking opportunities. So plenty of heavy braking zones, but on a narrow track. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It's a tricky track for overtaking. So you've got to be brave on those brakes.
And it's because of this compact nature of the track here, and wouldn't you say that overtaking becomes an opportunity that's just incredibly difficult to try and really make happen, because you're really not getting to the top end of the Toyota Yaris's top speed, especially when the Yaris, which is no disrespect to the Yaris, a car which really does struggle on a 0 to 60 time, effectively makes life really difficult to get up through the gears and get yourself in a position where you can use the overspeeds that are available.
Yeah, and that's always been a nature of Tsukuba. Obviously, you can't reach the top speed of the car. That's just the nature of it. So focus on the acceleration of the cars. Try and get the car to accelerate off the line as quickly as possible, because with the 3 hairpins that we have around this circuit, that is going to be your closest friend. And I was saying before about the hairpins, well, 2 of them are really overtaking zones. We need to talk about turn 4, because although it's an hairpin in itself, the camber of it lets you take a little bit more speed through than it does the other 2 hairpins. So in effect, it kind of disregards that overtaking opportunity that you could have because of that narrow run through turns 2 and 3. You can go side by side. We've seen plenty of cars go through there side by side, but that's all down to that exit of turn 1. Shortly said, Jake, and to sum it up pretty briefly, you can't really make any mistakes because the next corner is an overtaking zone.
Absolutely it is. And ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be able to move over to qualifying in the next couple of minutes here. Hopefully, it looks like we are very soon going to be able to get ourselves back into the action and back into the swing of things here with World Pro Racing. If you haven't had the chance already, you can like, you can share, you can subscribe, and you can also head over to worldproracing.com. If you are a brand new amateur who wants to get into sim racing and find a community that is effectively more open and gives you more chance to learn and progress, or if you are someone who's a veteran and has been around sim racing for a very long time, looking for a championship to test your skills, World Pro Racing has all sorts of events that happens all throughout. There is so much that can happen. You can head over to worldproracing.com to sign up for any upcoming events, be they casual, be they championships. You can find them right there. But Kieran, we now start to focus on, okay, driver mindset, getting back into the rhythm, getting back into the swing of a qualifying mindset, because they had that minute or 2 minutes where they tried to attack and tried to get those times in the way that they wanted to. Ultimately, that didn't happen. But now the question becomes, okay, how do I get back into the rhythm and momentum and the mindset of putting a good qualifying time together after what has been a 10-minute break there or thereabouts?
Yeah, it's always difficult to get back into the swing of things with a 10-minute qualifying session as well. There's not a lot of time to get back into the swing of things, but these are top drivers and they'll know what it takes to keep themselves afoot and keep themselves sharp. That's the reason I'm in the commentary box. If there's a 10-minute break, that's it. I'm having a drink and tuning out completely. So that's why I'm not racing. That's why I'm in the commentary box. I like it here. But more about the drivers then. Obviously, that little break might be a little bit of a stopping point for some drivers. But we've got some quick drivers here. We've got drivers who know the game. They've been in it long enough, and they should be able to just defeat that complacency that gets to most.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a few things on the fly that we need to work out here. So we're going to step aside for just one moment with World Pro Racing. We'll be back with more after this.
This stream is powered by Melita, using Melita Gigapower Internet. World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
For only €5 a month, experience every high-definition moment on your TV, tablet, phone or PC. Great teams, great moments, and so much more. TSN from Melita is your ticket to stay in the game. Visit melita.com/sports.
Senna was a god. No one could even dream to follow him.
I'm from a very humble background.
The role of women at that time were really difficult.
It's just so dangerous. You're risking not only your life, but also my life.
Wish your Wi-Fi network would just work in any room? Our new Stellar Wi-Fi is AI assisted to give you the smoothest, fastest possible Wi-Fi throughout your home. Stellar Wi-Fi, assisted by AI, exclusive to Melita. Find out more in-store or online.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to coverage of the Toyota Yaris Teams event here at Tsukuba, ? At this moment in time. We are having a few issues with the Yaris at this moment in time, and we are trying to desperately look around and find a solution. My name's Jake Sperry. Kieran McGinley is alongside me here for this one. But Kieran, this is a really interesting scenario for these drivers. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes, you get things that don't quite work out and don't quite seem to work in the way that people intend things to work. And I think the opportunity here, and I think why we're seeing this sort of wait at this moment in time, is because effectively we want a fair and open field for everybody to have a chance.
Yeah, and it's really important that everybody gets that fair opportunity to prove their worth out there. We don't want any disruptions. We don't want anything that could hamper a driver in terms of making sure that everything runs smoothly in that sense. So hopefully we'll get that level playing field achieved very soon, and we can get some qualifying action on the board. And we want everybody to set their quickest lap possible on their own power.
And of course, it's that own power that comes into play as well, because this may be a team game, but they also have to work individually for their best possible results. It's not like the case of, say, having a driver swap endurance event, Kieran, where you jump into someone else's car and you've got to bring that car home. It's effectively 2 cars, 2 drivers, and you've got to bring the best out of yourself to get that result up forward.
Yeah, and it's always a way forward, isn't it, with teams that have different cars out on track, scoring points for the same team. You've got to rely on your teammate to bring you the best result possible if you're trying to get also the best result possible, because you're going to be at that point where you've got to be thinking that if you come across each other on the same bit of track, who's faster, who should be going through, and who should be the one trying to challenge forward in order to score as many points as possible, and who's almost like the rear gunner who's going to try and retain as many points as possible. That is a scenario that you've got to think about for some of these teams. So, we could be seeing some great action out here. One for the defensive drivers and one the drivers on the attack from the very start on race 1 with those reverse grids in race 2.
Now, here's my question, and it's one which I think could be something that maybe you could do as a strategy, maybe something that some of the quick drivers would keep in mind. With the fact that qualifying results would be reversed, would it be a case where you try and set a time that's maybe slower than what you expect to run in the race and try and make your way through the field during the events, but maybe you give yourself a better opportunity then in that second race to go and attack against drivers in qualifying that are going to maybe have an easier time of passing?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? You've got to try and find the sweet spot in making sure... Sorry, my soundproof is coming off the wall. You've got to make sure that you have that perfect balance between the two sections there of race 1 and race 2. Now, you could try and go flat out at the start of the first qualifying session, or the qualifying session, I should say, and set the fastest time, be at the front of the field, and try and ease your way into the first race to get your first amount of points on the board, preferably with a race win. But that means then you're going to start at the back of the grid for the second race. So then you've got to work your way through the order to try and get as many points as possible. If you try and sandbag yourself, yes, in that first race, you'll be further down the field, but there is that chance that it won't quite work out. You've got a lot of traffic around you, and there's 13 other drivers out there that could make a mistake, and you could be caught in it if you're stuck in that midfield.
I'm just getting some word in from the race control and what we're dealing with right now. And the fact of the matter is, I believe the Yaris is going to be exchanged somehow, some way, through some supersonic shipment of vehicles. There's magically 14 Yarises have turned into 14 GT3 vehicles right now. And I believe we'll be driving GT3 around Tsukuba, which that in itself seems incredibly daunting.
It does, doesn't it? They're much wider, those GT3s, for sure. So it should provide even more of a challenge for the drivers. So the margins of error come way down here now if we're driving those GT3s. So the drivers now have to rethink their own driving styles. It'll be much different to what the Yaris is that they were driving in the previous practice and qualifying session, to a car that maybe they haven't driven a lot of. This is going to be an interesting race because some of the drivers are going to be thrown right in at the deep end here.
I think every driver, you could say here, Kieran, is thrown in at the deep end here. It's same point, same format, but the difference is you've got a car which can probably go around 20, 25 seconds quicker around the lap than, say, the Yaris can, or 20 to 15 seconds quicker than the Yaris can. But at the same point, you are dealing with vehicles that are a lot quicker, races that will be going a lot faster, and effectively margins of error, which, when you've got a slower car like the Yaris compared to a quicker car like a GT3 style vehicle, are a lot finer.
Yes, and when you get something like a GT3 car, you're starting to add some aero into the occasion as well. And with more aerodynamics, it means the car can carry more speed through the corners. More speed through the corners means less opportunities for braking zones. Less opportunities for braking zones mean fewer overtaking attempts. So what was a narrow Tsukuba circuit has now become an even more daunting challenge for those starting towards the back. That will be the pole position and front row, basically, of qualifying, who'll have to deal with that in race 2.
We were looking at times coming in. It was 59 seconds we were seeing going around from the Yaris, and I expect that we'll see something in and around 45 seconds in terms of lap times. But what that will also do, it also effectively shortens this race and makes the racing a little bit more difficult for drivers, because if you've only got 15 laps, as we're staying exactly the same on the lap count here, Kieran, this is going to be more of a race where we're going to be seeing, well, okay, 15 laps in the Yaris, you've got a little bit of time to make things happen. 15 laps GT3 style, you don't have time.
Going to be gone in a flash. That's as simple as that. If you make a mistake in the race, you're going to be punished, and you've got much less time to recover that said mistake. So it's going to be difficult for the drivers. It means now that, as you said before, mistakes will have to be at a minimum, if not a premium, to make sure that they get the best result possible. What that will do as well is sort of throw a spanner into the works for these drivers. They're going to have to reassess the situation. They're going to have to reassess that levels of grip they're going to find. They've really only got qualifying to get themselves warmed up to these cars. So that should provide some interesting action heading into the race.
It certainly should here. And ladies and gentlemen, if you are watching in whatever platform you are, be it on YouTube, Facebook Live, and on Twitch as well, be it watching on motorsport.tv, be it with TVM Sports, and of course with ESTV, the Esports Television Network, we thank you so very much for being with us at this stage for coverage here that we will hopefully try and bring to you as soon as we possibly can. We still have a few issues that we are trying to solve here on this end. And hopefully, if things do turn to the worst, we will hopefully try and bring you that event on a different day and give you a different opportunity to see this sort of team racing be out there and get available for all of you. But Kieran, now you start thinking about, okay, if things have to start turning to maybe different days, if things are just dragging on and continuing on, how do you keep yourself in that mindset? How do you keep yourself in the idea and the spirit of a racing driver? Because it's so very easy to switch off. It's so very easy to lose that focus and that concentration. But at the same time, you know, you've got to be able to effectively go like this in a situation like that where, okay, everything's working quick, jump in, qualify now before things start to go wrong.
I think some drivers will approach it in different ways. You've got data-driven drivers who will be going over their strategy and thinking, right, what's the best possible scenario here? What can I do here, here, and here? You've got the drivers that try and think of strategy on the spot. Should I go attacking? Should I maybe try and defend into turn one? You've got drivers who might let that nerve creep into them, but there's always a driver out there that finds a way to deal with those nerves. I mean, I've seen some drivers try and visualize the track as they're going out there. They'll close their eyes for a bit and just visualize the track going around. Now, when they haven't had a lot of running in that GT3, that's going to be a little bit difficult. What the mindset has to be is make yourself the strongest you possibly can, and also at the same time just try and keep your mind occupied and not letting yourself lose that focus. Do anything you can that's related to what's coming up to make sure that you try and keep the best mindset possible going all the way through.
Absolutely. And we see that as well when it comes to real racing as well. Drivers are always trying to find the best possible solutions available to them, especially when there's things like red flags and delays, which often do come about in terms of racing. I know I was up at the Three Sisters circuit a couple of months ago, and we had a delay of about an hour whilst paramedics had to attend to a driver. And then there was a race that had to come along after that to finish off proceedings for championships, which ultimately, when you looked at that situation, having a whole hour to try and work out what do you need to do to get back in the right mindset is a very similar style of thoughts, process, and mentality, where you've got to really try and visualize where you are, what are you doing, what's the goal coming up, where is the right plan to be, and how am I going to qualify this car as quickly as I possibly can.
Yeah, and one other thing as well is this is going to be one long stoppage, which is easier to deal with than if there's multiple stoppages all the way through. Much easier to deal with. I remember I was at Brands Hatch this year for the Enduro Car finale, which was quite a race to behold, but qualifying was stopped 7 times with a red flag due to incidents happening out on track. And you see the drivers start to get a little bit nervy. They start to be a little bit more on edge, and they just want to get out there, get some laps on the board. They don't like stoppages. No way. I don't think anybody does. Sometimes they do happen, but it's got to be that chance where you can't let that complacency slip in. And it's also a chance to try and keep your cool. If you get frustrated with how many stoppages there are, or if you get frustrated with how long the stoppage is, that easily affects your mindset. You don't drive a happy race, you drive an angry race. If you drive an angry race, you're more aggressive, and that could result in more mistakes heading into the race.
It absolutely could, but then there are some drivers who maybe sometimes you could say drive better when they're angry. I mean, let's take Lewis Hamilton, for example. Lewis Hamilton is a driver, say, Kieran, who demands perfection out of his car. But how many times this season, say in Formula One, have we seen Lewis Hamilton go out there? Something's not right with the car. He doesn't like how the tires are working. He doesn't like something with the strategy. And then he goes out, he gets aggressive with it, and then suddenly he sets the fastest lap by like another second.
I mean, that's a great point, isn't it? Where sometimes angry drivers are the way forward in some respects. But when you get an angry driver, they are going to be more aggressive, and more aggression means more likely to be opportunistic. They want to just get out there, get racing, and sometimes that frustration can slip in to that driver mindset. So they might go for moves that maybe weren't there before. They might go for moves that were never on, that they wouldn't normally have done under normal circumstances. So whilst Lewis Hamilton sometimes can drive an angry race really well, and he's been known to do so, there's a fine line between driving angry and getting the best results and driving angry and finding yourself in the wall or possibly out of the race.
Absolutely. We see it time and time again from drivers, and especially around here. Now, this is going to be a circuit which really does showcase how frustrations happen. I remember playing a game of FIFA 07 on the Nintendo DS. I was a kid. Wow. And the one thing that I would keep hearing in terms of when I'm shooting that shot by Clive Tilsley, who was on the commentary, it was the case of you don't want to keep getting bogged down and frustrated. When teams get bogged down and frustrated, that's when chances come. I like to think of that being the same, Kieran, when it comes to racing. When a driver gets bogged down and frustrated behind drivers, that's when chances come for drivers behind.
Yes, and it was a lesson taught to you by Clive Tilsley 13 years ago. That's a nice life story there, Jake. I do quite like that one. But that's exactly true. If you let that aggression and let that frustration slip through, not only does it hamper your chances of a good result, but it really does increase the chances that other drivers have that have managed the situation better. And that's what we're possibly going to see heading into this race, is that who has managed this scenario better, who has kept their mind in the game, and who's been able to keep complacency at bay. All not easy things to do whatsoever.
Absolutely. And this is what we're trying to say right now is that there's no easy solution here for these drivers when they are going to go back out there and going to try and challenge this course. There is no guarantees that they're going to be in the easiest or the best position and solution to go out there and get their best result. This is a case where they're effectively doing what happens in the NFL, Kieran, when it comes to kickers who sometimes go out there, try and hit that game-winning field goal, and then they have their coach throw a timeout and say, you know what, we're going to take another wait and try and do it again. This is effectively icing every driver in this field.
That's one way of putting it, for sure. But in a game where there's a lot of stoppages, you can manage that a lot better. When it comes to motorsport, where it's normally one long event all the way through and you get a stoppage within it, that's where the frustration lies in. It's because it's not normal. It's out of the normality of what the drivers are expecting. So for drivers not expecting a stoppage, i.e. a red flag, or these technical issues we're unfortunately having right now, then obviously that is when the sort of frustration can start to build up. And it's not instantly, oh, the race has stopped, I'm frustrated. It's more of a build-up thing. Drivers are okay with one stoppage. They're okay with a 5-minute stoppage. But as that time increases, or as the amount of stoppages increases, that frustration builds and builds and builds. And it's not easy once you get a sort of over the pot, if you can imagine that analogy in your head. But it can happen. It has happened, but hopefully our drivers won't be getting to that point here tonight. They'll realize that as a team, they've got to work together. That's another thing as well. Once these drivers are in teams, they're probably in communication with each other, which means they can keep each other in line. Yes, they can share the frustration, but they can keep each other in that right mindset.
And it's that mindset on team battle and team dynamic which we're hoping to see here tonight. Now, that team dynamic is going to be really crucial, because if drivers are, say, talking with the other drivers that they've randomly been paired with, how good's the chemistry going to be when they're out there and working together? Who could be the most effective communicator when it comes out to these sorts of races? Because if you can communicate with your teammate and work out strategy and work out a way to go out there and attack this race and work out where's the best place to be when it comes to racing around here, sometimes you've got the good side of the draw, sometimes you've got the bad side of the draw. If you've got chalk and cheese who are working together in the same race, and you've got someone who can't maybe work together and you don't, not necessarily quite nicely, an effective team will do a lot more than a team that maybe hasn't got everything all together because they're infighting.
And a stoppage like this can help the chemistry between the two of them, because you'll get the drivers actually talking to each other a bit more during this sequence. They might be joking around, they might be talking about strategy, whatever it is, they're going to be building that chemistry up. So it's actually going to help them in the race. And as I said before, if you've got a teammate alongside you, it's easier to keep each other in line by saying, actually, keep that mindset, or don't worry about that, let's focus, than it is on your own and trying to manage that yourself. So it's always nice to have a sort of partner in crime in these scenarios, because not only do you have someone to talk to, but you have someone to keep you focused and keep complacency at bay.
And of course, complacency, especially for those drivers at the top of the field, may be something that creeps in during the second race, because it's so very easy to have a runaway victory. It doesn't matter, some would say, if you win by an inch or you win by a mile, a win is a win is a win. But when you have to go and fight through the field, maybe that's going to be a little bit of a something where in race 2, that's going to be a lot more difficult to try and manage, because quick drivers like making positions quickly, and they feel like they can make positions quickly. But when you have to be patient and you have to wait for chances around a track like Tsukuba, maybe here we could say, Kieran, that this is not going to be as easy of a race as others would find, because that driver who can pick through the traffic early can then build a gap when other quicker drivers are stuck in traffic and can't find a way through.
Yeah, what you'll find with the top drivers are they like being at the front of the field. They like having a 1 next to their name. They don't necessarily like having a 2, a 3, or at worst a 16 by their name in the standings. They want to get through that number and scythe it down as much as possible. So that will mean that they want to get overtakes done quickly. Their aggression might be through the roof to make sure that some overtakes are actually made. So it opens up that opportunity that mistakes will follow through. Some of the drivers in that midfield, or possibly even at the tail end of the field, might find that they haven't actually been too far off the pace. And once they're out in front and the leaders behind them, if you like, start falling into trouble and can't make overtakes stick, then that changes the transition and the complexity that the drivers who were leading in race 1 have of finding their way through the field. That can call in desperation, that can call in moves that maybe were never on, and that could be a factor in a race being ruined when they were winning the race in race 1.
Exactly, and there aren't any guarantees for a win, and of course, starting at the front of the field, it gives you the best possible opportunity to go out there and win races. It's never a guarantee to qualify and go out there and win an event outright, and you often see that actually when it comes to racing drivers, how a lot of racing drivers say in Formula 1, the best drivers have maybe a 40 or a 50% conversion rate of their pole position to race victory.
Yeah, and it's a nice feeling when that happens, isn't it? But normally, as you say, putting yourself on pole position, putting yourself at the front row gives you the best chance of winning the race. What doesn't give you the best chance of winning the race is starting at the back on the last row, or maybe even in that 14th place that the pole sitter for the qualifying session will be in for race 2. So it throws in the race is here tonight. Hopefully we do get the races here tonight. We'll throw in that action of, because there aren't many gaps between the points, it means that if you lose out on 1 or 2 positions, it's not nearly as bad as in other championship series where the points difference is so sizably heavy towards the winning mentality. So, for example, in Formula 1, you've got 25 points for the race winner. You'll have 18 points for second place, 15 for third, but it's heavily weighted towards the top. With this series, it's spread all the way through pretty evenly down that point scoring order. So it's going to be an interesting one, because if you make a mistake or you don't get that certain position, well, that might only be 1 point you've lost out on.
We will apologise here, ladies and gentlemen. Just getting words in from the stewarding team that the issue that we have is pretty much out of our control, and we have been unable to find a way to sort out the issue that we have been having. Therefore, tonight's event that you have been tuning in for today will unfortunately be cancelled and will be postponed to a later date in time to make sure that everything is going to be working. It's worth pointing out as well that the issue that we have had here today is nothing to do with the admin side. It has been an issue with servers and on the side of those who have created Gran Turismo Sport and PlayStation and all of those servers, so we haven't been able to work out all of those issues today. So we will be jumping over towards action at a different point in time. You can go over to the socials to try and work things out, be it Facebook, be it Twitter, be it wherever it may be that you get your news about World Pro Racing. You can find out more news about when that event will be rescheduled there. But unfortunately, that brings things to an end. From a team that's been working hard behind the scenes, Adrian Fagayo and George Muscat, the race stewarding team who have had to help with postponement of this event, Justin and Nathan Mifsud, who have been on the cameras, Kieran McGinley, myself, Jake Sperry. We'll hopefully see you very soon. We will be back tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, with round 2 of the World Pro Racing Assetto Corsa Competizione Sprint Series. You want to make sure you tune into that, because that's coming from sunny Barcelona, and we, hopefully, will see you then.
This stream is powered by Melita, using Melita Gigapower Internet. World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
For only €5 a month, experience every high-definition moment on your TV, tablet, phone or PC. Great teams, great moments, and so much more. TSN from Melita is your ticket to stay in the game. Visit melita.com/sports.
Senna was a god. No one could even dream to follow him.
I'm from a very humble background.
The role of women at that time were really difficult.
This is so dangerous. You're risking not only your life, but also my life.
Wish your Wi-Fi network would just work in any room? Our new Stellar Wi-Fi is AI assisted to give you the smoothest, fastest possible Wi-Fi throughout your home. Stellar Wi-Fi assisted by AI, exclusive to Melita. Find out more in-store or online.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.